Okay, well, welcome back, all of you who've joined us. We may have a few more joining us from around the world, who knows? And we are beginning a conversation based on the webinar about 10 days ago. We've now transitioned from looking at climate change from personal perspective to dealing with systemic issues. But systemic changes are very complex. They're harder to grasp, they're harder to deal with, they require more effort to make changes. So it's not an easy, these are not easy topics to deal with, but they're very necessary. We can't adequately deal with the economy in just one session. So there will be more sessions dealing with the economy, especially consumerism. So watch for that coming up in the fall. We always want for us to be in control, for us to make the changes that are necessary to control the results. But systemic issues involve aspects that we have no control over and are well beyond us. So the pervasive structural issue we looked at 10 days ago was the basic economic model and how to address it. Currently, we practice a model that is called create, use, discard, or make, take, and dispose. And it considers resources to be endless, waste is of no consequence, and the implications for nature are negligible, all three of which are fallacies. Lugano Kapembwa was the one who shared our webinar about the circular economy. In the circular economy, from the very get-go, new resources enter the system as modules that the model tracks and keeps tabs on and keeps reusing, replacing, and repurposing them as long as possible, with the goal being no waste. It's one thing to advocate for systemic changes like we want to do. It's another to change our lifestyle and accept the cost of making those systemic changes. So it depends on your nature. You will want more or less laws and regulations about building codes and climate change and things like that, depending on who you are and how you feel about those things. In the long run, where the tire meets the road, we have to accept the personal consequences of the systemic changes that we advocate for and are trying to bring about. And so there is a cost, and we have to bear that cost and make the adaptations that go along with it. So I'm going to, we're going to help you understand the circular economy with a couple of videos that will help summarize the circular economy in very simple terms for people like me, for whom this is a new area of thought. The nature of a circular economy looks to the earth itself for solutions. Where is the earth already sharing resources? What can we learn from the circular recycling of resources in nature? And so that's where we start with this video from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation.
And will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food, energy is provided by the sun, things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Now, let's put these two cycles together. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value. And imagine that these products are made and transported using renewable energy. Here we have a model that builds prosperity long term. And the good news is, there are already companies out there who are beginning to adopt this way of working. But the circular economy isn't about one manufacturer changing one product. It's about all the interconnecting companies that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
Hey, wonderful. We're going to go ahead now with Rod, who is going to give us a story from his own perspective and invite us to the first breakout session. Rod?
Yes, just a quick example, and actually Joan will have one as well, of this linear economy. Now, I'm not sure how well you can see that. That is a key from a keyboard. Little thin piece of plastic. What do you think? 5 cents, 1 cent worth? When I was at my office, that came off. Eventually, it got to the point where it was becoming virtually unusable because I needed to use it so often and it just wasn't working. So we had a deal, being a business, that had a 1 hour turnaround. That is, we'd call somebody up, within 1 hour, they would come in and take care of whatever the problem is. So I expected the person to come in with a little box of keys, plastic keys, find the right one and plunk this new one because the old one, some little plastic knob on it had broken. No, instead, take a look at your keyboard. What he did was he came in and he removed the entire keyboard and replaced that simply because of that one little key was missing. And in fact, at the end, he said, I thought he'd take the keyboard and somehow be able to reuse it. But no, he said, you want the keyboard? And I said, what? He says, yeah, we're just gonna get rid of it. And I said, well, sure, because if I get another key missing, then at least I've got this keyboard. So there you go. Just a quick example of how business, when they are in the linear mode of just, make, use, get rid of, get the next thing, efficiency is more important than anything else. And the most efficient thing to do was the way they were doing it for whatever reason. The fact that it created all this extra waste, that it was using some of these rare earth materials and things like that, and they were just being dumped, was immaterial to them. So that's just an example to reinforce this linear economy. And there it is. Lots of businesses operate that way. Joan, you've got another example.
When I saw the webinar for the first time that Lugano did, I started thinking about couches. Many of you are of an age as I am, and will recall an era when people got married and they got a couch, and basically that lasted for years and years and years and years. I remember my parents' couch. I was a teenager, I think, and I wasn't the first child, but I was a teenager by the time they had it recovered the first time. They sent it out to have the padding redone and a new fabric put on when the one was worn out. And they had it redone a second time. That piece of furniture was reused and lasted for 40 years. Now, all the furniture in most stores is designed to last 7 years. That's it. 7 years, and it goes to the landfill because consumer data shows that people want new furniture every 7 years. They want to redecorate. They want to refurnish. So they're moving and they want different furniture for a different space. And there's no concept anymore of taking something and continually refurbishing and reusing it to make it last a lifetime. So that was what I thought of. So we're going to go into our first breakout groups now. Rod can put that up for us so we can see the question. And really, our first breakout group, we want to concentrate on raising our awareness around this take, make, dispose linear economy, and think about, how and where we've experienced waste and planned obsolescence in this current linear economy. We'll have 10 minutes in this group. So, Chris, we're ready to go. So, last month, we ask you to remember and put in the chat some of the key points that you remembered from the webinar. However, the webinar was 2 weeks ago, and we recognize that it was a challenging webinar. There was a lot of information to absorb. And so we're going to give you our summary from the webinar. And if you have things to add, please do go ahead and put them in the chat. But we're not expecting that you're going to remember lots at this point. So next slide, please. So this is the definition that Lugano gave us, and we just wanted to break it down for you. It's from this organization called WRAP, which is a business-oriented organization. So a circular economy, it's an alternative. And the key points are that we keep resources in use for as long as possible. So, sometimes we have to keep in the back of my mind, what do we need to do to make those resources quality, so that they will last longer as opposed to planned obsolescence? We extract the maximum value from them, and we recover and we regenerate. And really, most of what Lugano talked about was about this recover and regenerate and the complexities and issues around that. So next slide. One of the things we want to say right from the beginning is that the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle, are listed in order of importance. It's more important to reduce than to reuse and recycle, and it's more important to reuse than recycle. It's our priority, our first priority should always be reduce. The circular economy does not talk about reduce. It really is just talking about the bottom two, reduce and recycle. Reuse and recycle. We'll get to reduce when we talk about consumerism. But for this discussion, the focus is on reuse and recycle. Next slide, please. One of the key points was that we're in transition. The idea of a circular economy is not brand new. It's been around for a few decades now. There's been some business people who are working on it. There's been lots of business people who are working on it, but we're not there yet. 62% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are still coming from raw material extraction and manufacture. So it's really important that we get there, not just from management of resources, but also from perspective of lowering the carbon footprint. And the point he made was that the world is still only 9% circular, but that the year previously it had been 11% from whenever these statistics came. So it's an up and down. It's a bumpy road. He talked about, have to try and fail and try again. It's not necessarily going to be just a straight path. So next slide, please, Rod. Spent a lot of time talking about business and the business value chains because it has to be sustainable, it has to be practical, it has to be profitable for business. If it's not profitable for business, it's not going to happen. There's no driver for them to get there. So we need drivers from the business side that are profitable and practical and scalable. We also need drivers from the consumer end that recognize the importance of it and that are willing to say, yes, if I have to pay more for this or have some inconvenience with it, it's worth it in the long time. But that what ties it all together is this concept of lifestyle asset tracking. That currently there's one or more intermediary barriers between the business that manufactures the product or the businesses that manufacture, the multiple components of the product and the end users. And without an ability to talk and explore needs and opportunities and requirements and what works and what doesn't work, it won't happen. So there's really those two key things, communication and an ability to track the assets. Next slide, please. We wanted to just show you a quick example. We've all driven past junkyards for cars. When I was a kid, the entire cars were just junk. They're just driven out to an empty lot and abandoned. Then we got to salvage operations that would salvage some of the components out of the cars. Next slide, please. Now, the automotive industry is working towards this concept of asset tracking and ability to reuse components. But look at the complexity involved with just one model of automobile from one manufacturer. And you start to get a sense of the complexity of making system-wide systemic changes. The good news is people are working on it because there is a recognition that in the long run it can be more profitable. Next slide, please. So Lugano summed up his presentation with these 6 key factors. The stakeholder alignment, the connectedness of the whole business ecosystem, common dialogue, the need for robust data that often doesn't exist, and so the data that is needed has to be determined, and then it has to be gathered, and then it has to be analyzed, which means that this is not a fast process. It takes years to implement one component of it. And usability and convenience. Okay, I think I have one more slide. It's not a one-stop shop. These different sectors have very specific challenges. He stressed several times this try, fail, try. This is new. It's complex. It's challenging. We're not going to get it right the first time we try something. So we have to be willing to try, fail, and try. And we have to build that into our budgets. And that we need to be open and transparent about the failures along the way as well as the successes. So I think that was the end of our summary. And I'm not sure, Dean, whether there was anything in the chat. I'm not seeing anything.
All right, so I think we can move on.
Yep, I think so.
So the next thing is another video that just gives a little further depth to this concept of the circular economy.
Hi, Alex here. Today's video is about circular economy. It is a term that we hear a lot these days. I was asked many times to make a video about it, so here it is. I will explain what we mean by circular economy. I will go through all the things we can do to go from our current economy to a circular one, and I will use many examples. If you stay until the end, I will share a book with you that you can read to learn more about it. You will see there is way more to it than just recycling. Okay, let's get drawing. When my son was 3 years old and asking his mommy what was this circular economy thing she was working on, here is what she told him. It is when everything is healthy food for something else. So simple and sweet. I loved it. In other words, it means running the economy like nature runs its own business. Plants use carbon dioxide and nutrients to grow and produce oxygen. Animals use oxygen and create carbon dioxide and nutrients. Nothing is wasted. It is a closed-loop system. Circular economy is generally opposed to the linear economy, take, make, waste, we have been running for many years. Some people also use the term cradle to cradle as opposed to cradle to grave. As explained in my triple bottom line video, the economy is part of society, which is part of the environment. You can click here if you want to watch this video. Now let's look at the economy. We can split into two categories the things that we need to run into closed loops. Technical materials, biological materials. Technical materials have this typical life cycle. Raw materials are mined, the product is manufactured, then it is transported to be used until the end of its life. We often tend to think about the end of life and the importance of recycling, and this is true. But for our economy to be circular, there are many things we can do before the end of life. It starts with using resources that are already extracted. Say my product needs copper. It is best to mine copper that is not used anymore, that we also call post-consumer, as opposed to mining some new one from the ground. Especially when you know that 1. Copper is predicted to be mined out worldwide by 2040, and 2. Processing recycled copper uses only 10 to 20% of the energy it takes to process new copper from virgin ore. When manufacturing my product, I can design it so it can easily be dismantled and the copper can easily be recycled next time. I can also manufacture my product so it lasts a long time, so it can be maintained and repaired. I can design it so it uses as little energy as possible. This TED video uses a great example of a tea kettle and the fact that during commercial break of a popular TV show, England has to buy nuclear power from France because millions of people go to the kitchen at the same time to boil an entire 2-liter kettle to make 1 cup of tea. Once a product cannot be used anymore, then it needs to be collected and recycled. Here comes an important question. Does the recycled material maintain its quality to be used for similar applications, or is it downcycled into a material that has a poorer quality? Downcycled was a term from the book Cradle to Cradle. You can find a link in the description below. Remember, in a circular economy, everything is healthy food for something else. Nothing goes to landfill. Biological materials are farmed or collected and then possibly processed and transported before reaching the consumer. Once consumed, they can be used to create biogas, biochemicals, or be composted. Finally, they can go back to nature to restore it. But again, in a circular economy, nothing goes to landfill. Two transition strategies can be very helpful as we're trying to create a circular economy. Substitution and dematerialization. Substitution is about using different resources to achieve the same goal. For example, the world is running out of lithium. So, unless we can recycle lithium batteries more efficiently, sodium-ion batteries might be a better option for car manufacturers in the future. Dematerialization refers to using less of a resource to serve the same economic function in society. As an example, Interface is the world's largest designer and maker of commercial modular carpet. But they don't sell the carpet anymore. Their customers buy the service of having carpet on their floor. Interface is in charge of maintaining and repairing the carpet, and they do that very efficiently because it is their specialty and they control the entire process. Using tiles, they can replace only the ones that need replacing. The old tiles go back to the factory to be recycled, where new tiles are made with 98% recycled or bio-based content. How is that for almost circular? Of course, creating a circular economy is only one piece of the sustainability puzzle, and many other aspects have to be taken into account to get 100% sustainable. Climate change, sustainable energy, sustainable agriculture, social sustainability, etc. As promised in the beginning, here is a great book I recommend if you want to learn more. It is very well put together and it talks about circular economy in the modern age. I will put a link in the description below. If you found this video useful, please like it, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when we post new videos. You can help us make more videos to learn about sustainability for free by making a pledge on our Patreon page or by giving us a tip on our website sustainabilityillustrated.com. Thank you to all our patrons, and I will see you in the next video.
So we see a request in the chat for links to the video to be put into the chat. So Dean, can I ask, Rod, you've got the links, so if you can at some point put the link into the chat, that would be really helpful. We have some time now for a spiritual practice. We're going to give our brains a little bit of a rest and have a time for connecting. And so I think Rod's going to put up a picture of a tree. If you have a plant in your house that you are near, or if you have a tree outside your window, or if not, you can imagine a tree. But we just want you to get comfortable in your chair. Close your eyes or gaze softly at the tree and focus on your breathing. Let it naturally deepen, energize, and nourish your body as it takes you into a time of connection, a time of prayer. And as you breathe in, picture or imagine or feel the oxygen traveling from the trees to you, to feed you and nourish you. And as you breathe out, sense the carbon dioxide traveling back to the trees and the plants to feed and nourish them. We are one with all that is. We are fed by the trees and the plants, and we in turn feed them. A cycle that's necessary for all health and all flourishing. Truly the sacredness of creation. Keep this awareness with you as you return your focus to the here and now and to the meeting. When you're ready, open your eyes and be blessed and be a blessing. Thank you for your willingness to participate with us in this sacred connection. We're now ready to go into our second breakout groups, where we're going to shift from the linear economy to talking about the circular economy. Here are some questions that may help you to to center your thoughts and what has been your experience with it. Where have you experienced extending the life and repurposing resources? And how do you feel about it? What's exciting? What's fearful? What's confusing? You'll have 20 minutes. Chris, we're ready to go into our groups now. I want to start by apologizing to everyone. I neglected to say when I invited you into the breakout group that there would be an opportunity at the end of it to share with the large group any quick key things that came out of your breakout group for you. So you have the opportunity now to put something in the chat if there was something you'd like to share with the whole group from your breakout group. And Dean, I think it is, will be reading those.
We want to ask Nancy Hilton, what was the place that she sends a lot of her recyclables to? We couldn't remember the name.
You're muted.
So Nancy?
It's a styrofoam recycling place down in Kent, and they have just great big bins, and you can just drop them off. And they also have big trucks that go out and get from large places, but it's all different kinds of packaging and it's sorted. You have to sort it into bins, colored versus non-colored, and the kind of it's like packaging styrofoam, and then cups and containers and things like that. So I discovered them, and I've told several people, just bring me your styrofoam and I'll take it when I go down to pick Rick up, because it's very easy to drop it off.
And Diane Weberly put in the chat that to check in your area to see if Ridwell, Ridwell, offers recycling. That's, I know, just come to Bellingham recently, and they recycle soft plastic bags and other kinds of soft plastic that you can't recycle along with your hard plastics,
right,
and other things too.
And
somebody said if
any kind of cloth.
Go ahead, Nick. Someone said if we buy peanut butter in glass jars rather than plastic, then the manufacturers will get the message. And somebody in our group said, you know, it irritates her that you have to buy, if you don't buy a whole pineapple, for example, or other kinds of fruits and vegetables one day, it's irritating that you have to buy these all in plastic. And the notion was, well, what if we all started saying to our grocers, you know, you need to give us a way to buy smaller quantities without using plastic to package it. Tom says, unless we're immediately affected by a crisis event, we're just slow to act. We need a vision for the long term, change our minds about how we do things. Nancy says electronic recycling places are easily found. Rainier Valley congregation recycles cans, thanks to Lee and Chris Sargent. Those are the comments we have so far in the chat. Our next door neighbor has a group called Next Door that is a great place to let people know what you might want to give away or sell. We've been able to give away many items. So how you actually dispose of things without throwing them away by giving them to someone else. Next Door is an app on your phone. Someone's asking about the name of the book and the author. I think it was The Circular Economy that was in that second video. And somebody says Best Buy recycles electronics. Someone says, I guess Mary Williams, unfortunately, we found out that the city does not recycle as much as they used to. And it's because China just does not want to take our trash. How come third world countries recycle so much more than we do? Any other thoughts? There are neighborhood share groups that are called Buy Nothing, Sell Nothing. You could start something in your neighborhood. We had an example on Thursday's conversation of someone who had started a tool library in their neighborhood. And Susan says China and other countries won't take our trash because we're not disciplined in keeping them clean of food waste. Diane says when our daughter visited South Korea, they recycle almost everything. And Mary, we also have had clothing swap events. And my girlfriend does these twice a week. I'll post the next one in the Greater Pacific Northwest. I guess you mean the news post. And Chris says the link to the book on Amazon. If you want to take that, copy that out of the link out of the chat. That's the link to the Circular Economy User's Guide. And Mary is correcting something. She's twice a year, not twice a week. Is that what? And just Sharon pointing out that first step is awareness of the issues, and then we can develop a vision for how we move forward. Mary wants to know, did anybody in your groups talk about their feelings, particularly, I guess, in relation to the work it's going to take? Anyone?
Well, I was just really more so meaning I was sharing that I come from a family where my dad was born in 1927, so the Depression era, and he saved and recycled lots of things, especially tools and electronics and stuff. And so I try to do that. Unfortunately, I'm a bit of a collector. But the other thing that I think that's hard about that is, I have a lot of feelings about saving stuff. And I also have feelings about when I don't like to throw things away that are somebody else could use, and I really want the things to go to a useful place, not just to Goodwill or Value Village where it's going to be bundled and sold to another country. So any other feelings around giving away or getting rid of stuff? Sometimes it's hard.
Anyone want to chime in? I'm looking to see if there's a raised hand somewhere.
Well, our group was very supportive of the circular economy, had many, many examples, and seemed excited about the idea of reusing, repurposing, repairing, making do. And when I asked specifically if there were concerns or questions, nobody seemed to have any. They felt like the circular economy was a great path forward for the future.
And Sharon says, we're being encouraged by our youth to move along this path. And Judy, encouraged by more and more earth-friendly products. Sharon, did you want to add to that? No.
Rod was talking
Michael,
about how his nieces and nephews are reducing. Instead of recycling and reusing, they're just reducing need for buying an automobile, shopping at thrift stores and not going for the big markets. And then there's the commercial here in the United States of these youth that are demanding changes that recognize the climate change. And, they're our new voting bloc. And so I'm encouraged that we'll ditch those old archaic mentality of deniers on climate and get you know, maybe even these youth in there representing the situation.
And Diane Weberly says there's a company called ETE, which stands for Everything Touches Everything Else. It's a company in Canada that produces plastic-free items. And Mary, there's a wonderful show out of England called The Repair Shop, where they fix up stuff and honor the skilled expertise of certain artisans, woodworkers, furniture repair and upholstery, repainting or cleaning artworks and paintings. And of course, we also all love the Antiques Roadshow. Anyone else? Michael, I see you're on.
I was going to say, that's the other thing we've lost is so many of the artisans that used to repair things, you know, even the vacuum shops or the, you know, it's hard to find. Even the shoe shops are sort of hard to find people who can fix your shoes because people just throw them away.
Yeah,
I would like to say,
Roy, go ahead.
Growing up during the war, we didn't have a lot of things. But after the war, all of a sudden, Army, Navy surplus started coming into our communities. And as a kid growing up in Boy Scouts, I'd get my first sleeping bag, Army surplus, backpack, Army surplus. And so there was a sense of being able to recycle at that time, of reuse. I don't know where that's gone, but even skis, I had my first skis were Army skis from the Snow Corps.
Could you repeat the name
Clark,
of
were you
that?
were you trying to?
Could somebody
Everything
repeat the name of
touches
that ETE? What does that stand for? The Canadian?
Everything touches yes. Okay. Everything touches everything else. And I think maybe time for Diane.
If you just Google ETEE, then they will come up. They're they use beeswax for things. They make toothpaste and toothbrushes that aren't plastic, and alternate things for, instead of saran wrap, which is made out of beeswax, to cover things or to put your produce in, and all kinds of stuff. So check out the website.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So Rod, I think I'm going to turn it back to you now. Well, I'm sorry, Michael DeMol has one comment from Australia.
Yeah, there's a fairly new science called systems science. And out of systems science, there's a fairly new theory called planetary boundaries. And planetary boundaries are the boundaries, if you go beyond them, you start to kill off the planet. And if these planetary boundary science can be used as leverage to promote all these ideas that you're promoting. I'll try and put a reference in the chat. Yeah.
Thank you. Rod, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, time to, excuse me, time to sort of bring it to a close. I wanted to show this chart. You may not be able to see it perfectly. Let's face it, we could spend a whole session just going through this. So it's just a quick sketch, a quick skim that I wanted to bring to your awareness. Some of your groups may have talked about some of these elements, but just so that we all end up with a bit of a complete sense that this circular economy, it's what I call, it's in a fragmented state. That is, the good part is it's starting to show up and exist. It's just fragmented. It's not the complete thing by any means, but we'll just quickly go through some of these. The very first at the top, so there are basically 6 categories. The first at the top, you can, and it's got actual brand names, so that can be sometimes helpful. For those, you know, that have used we currently live in such a world of convenience, and coffee is the most used substance next to oil in terms of its market. So those little Nespresso pods have gone from being completely unusable, you just had to throw them out, to now completely biodegradable. So there's I'm not saying yes or no to using those. I'm just saying there's a shift in this sort of direction. Getting down to sharing things. If you recalled that first video, it put up the question, what if we didn't own things? If you didn't own your washing machine, or maybe even your car, but you simply paid monthly fees and it was gradually replaced and or repaired and or so. So there's fragments of that showing up. You have Airbnbs, you have, well, this is from basically Europe, so you wouldn't recognize some of those car names, but you know, cars to go, car sharing programs. And again, not saying we want to maintain a car culture, but when they are needed, this is part of the transition that's going on. Someone mentioned my nieces, one or two of them, that's what they use. They don't have a car. So they don't have any expense of a car. When they need one, they just go to a car to go place and pick it up. So there is that element. There is the optimizing aspect. And there you can see some really big multinational names. And of course, you've got to beware of greenwashing. That is where it's 99% simply PR, but they've got some little project that makes them look good. Yes, of course that happens, but there are also very genuine attempts of some of these multinationals because they can see the business case for it. Sort of what Lugano was hinting at. There is a business case to be made for this, and some of them are gradually shifting. The loop aspect, which is what Lugano primarily dealt with, and what we've mainly dealt with, the recycling and remanufacturing and extracting materials so they can be reused and so on. There is the virtualization. Again, here we are on Zoom. We didn't have to all get in our cars and airplanes and things like that and to meet. We can simply do it in our own homes. Wonderful advance in that sense. iTunes is a real old example. We used to have to always go out and buy records. Now you can just download stuff. Netflix, similar thing. And Kindle now, of course, some people still like to feel a book, like the feel of a book, but there's your alternative. And the final one is the exchanging of things. And as well, you know, there was someone that was talking about, darn it all, I want to repair things, but there are no repair shops and things like that. And yet 3D printing is showing up, which can become the new, you need anything under the sun, these 3D printers can make it for you. Again, I'm not suggesting it's the be all and end all. These are all just fragments of this big picture that we hope will eventually converge into the world that we want and that we can help push, because we are the consumer. We are the one that they ultimately listen to. So can't dwell anymore on that. Easily could spend a lot of time in coaxing out all the possibilities that already exist, that don't yet, but we can push towards, and that we haven't even thought of yet. But that just gives you a bit of an overall sense of the scope and the various areas where people are coming up with ideas. Okay. Oh, I forgot to change this slide. This is Sunday, May 27th. So this is the final session before the summer. We will not have any formal presentations over the summer. We for sure will be picking up in the fall, as we have hinted at pretty much every session. There are other key topics that we want to cover. And then after that, where do we want to go? We're talking about maybe networking, support groups, and various things. By all means, share with us any of your thoughts where you'd like to see this go. But as you can see at the bottom, there are definitely topics we still need to cover, and we've mentioned more. The final thing is that we are entering reunion season for all of us, except maybe down in Australia. You've had it at a different time. But here are the reunions where I won't go into any of the detail because it was in the email that you just received yesterday that gave this entire list. So if you are interested in attending one of these, but you aren't part of Canada West or Headwaters or PSI, Pacific Southwest International, or wherever, but would like to join in one of those classes, get a hold of us. If you don't have, well, you have my email for sure because I'm the one that sends it out. So you can just email back on any of those emails, or just go up to the website. There is the contact us form and just say, hey, I would like to join the July 31st session. Can you give me the Zoom link? And when the reunion gives us the Zoom link, we can send it to you. So that's what's going on over the summer. Otherwise, we will be starting up in the fall. I will stop sharing then, just because at the end, I like to see everybody's face, because I like to pause and appreciate that sense of God's good spirit that is in you, that has clearly nurtured you to the point of concern and care for each other and the world, and that future that good spirit always coaxes us towards. So I want to end with just this gratitude for each one of you, and that sense of continuing to follow that spirit. And we for sure will be in these reunions and in the fall. And with that, may you go in that peace of God's good spirit, and we will reconvene next time. Thanks for attending today. Chris, you can unmute us all and we can say our goodbyes. And again, wonderful.
I can't unmute anybody. They can all unmute themselves.
Okay.
Keep boundaries, Chris.
Namaste.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you all very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.